Originally called Armistice Day, November 11th was once a day to remember the men and women who served in World War I and II. Now, known as Veterans Day, it serves as a celebration, as well as a day of remembrance for the millions of men and women who have served and sacrificed so much to ensure American freedom. Hello, I'm Lauren Pellegrino.
And I'm Lindsay Crawford. We are seniors at Hoover High School in North Canton, Ohio. Our community is home to many veterans who served our country in a number of ways. And as we reflect on the importance of Veterans Day, it's essential to dive into the history of North Canton. Our story begins during the Great Depression and World War II era. During this time, much of the nation grappled with hardships of the Great Depression. However, North Canton had a unique advantage: the presence of the Hoover Company.
North Canton, prior to the start of World War II, they were, like the rest of the country, dealing with the Great Depression. Luckily for North Canton, many of the effects, the worst sort of effects of the Depression, they were kind of shielded from because of the Hoover Company. The Hoover Company was able to maintain manufacturing and production of vacuums through the Depression, and therefore they didn't have to lay off a lot of workers. The company at the beginning of World War II employed over 1,000 people, and there were only 3,500 people who lived in North Canton at that time. So Hoover was the major employer in the city. And so what was happening with the company had a big impact on the citizens. And actually, North Canton was kind of more connected to what was happening internationally also because of the Hoover Company. So Hoover had a European headquarters just outside of London. And so when Europe entered World War II in 1939, that was something that people in North Canton would have been more aware of, I think, than many other communities, because of that connection between Hoover in North Canton and Hoover in Europe.
On September 1st, 1939, World War II began with the German invasion of Poland. A few years later, on December 11th, 1941, the United States officially entered the war, just days after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Here in North Canton, the Hoover Company had to switch gears to support the war effort. The company stopped manufacturing vacuums in order to make wartime products instead. They made parachutes for cluster bombs, motors for gun turrets, lifeboat inflators, helmet liners, and tens of millions of fuses for bombs. While production was a major change for the company at this time, other big changes were happening as many men and women left North Canton to join the war effort.
When the United States did officially enter World War II, obviously that meant that there would be a lot of people, young men and women, going off to serve in the military. Over 700 employees of the Hoover Company actually served in the military during World War II. So there were constantly people leaving North Canton to go serve in the military. And in the front lawn of the company, which was right in our main town, main part of North Canton, sort of the heart of North Canton, there was an honor roll that showed all the names of the people who had left to serve in the military. So I don't think there's any way that the whole community wasn't aware of each time groups of people would leave to serve.
Unfortunately, over 418,000 people in the United States lost their lives during World War II. It lasted 6 long years, but the war finally ended on September 2nd, 1945, when the Allies defeated the Axis powers. People were overjoyed when the war had officially ended, and here in North Canton, the Hoover Company was able to resume their production of vacuums. The demand for vacuums at this time was very high, and with this increase, the Hoover Company was able to provide jobs for hundreds of soldiers returning home from the war. While many soldiers did return home, unfortunately, 26 heroes from North Canton did not. As our community has always been a tight-knit one, the idea to memorialize the lives of those North Canton men who perished in the war was strongly supported. Thus, the idea for Memorial Stadium was born.
26 men who went to serve in the military from North Canton lost their lives over the course of the war. And so at the end of the war, certainly people wanted to recognize and, serve to protect the memory of those men. And so actually the idea for Memorial Stadium came about right as the war was ending, even before the war ended. So the plans for the stadium were announced in 1945, and they began building the stadium in 1946, and the first game was played on September 11th, 1947. So it was a pretty quick process from the idea of it to completion. And Memorial Stadium was really a community effort. It wasn't, just the Hoover company, although they were a big part of it as far as fundraising and, getting the effort off the ground. But really, the stadium cost $90,000, and at least half of those funds came from individual community members. So it was a major, community effort that made it happen.
Memorial Stadium has been a fixture in the North Canton community since 1947. The new stadium became a point of civic pride, and it has served the community ever since the first game was played there on September 11, 1947, with a win against Central Catholic. One of the captains of the 1947 football team, Bill Owens, said that the most significant part of playing at the stadium for him was the fact that the stadium was built in memory of the 20-some boys from North Canton who lost their lives during World War II. Owens was later inducted into the Hoover Athletic Hall of Fame for his contribution to North Canton athletics. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2021. Bill's son, Dave Owens, was able to share his dad's story with us and comment on the legacy of Memorial Stadium.
My name is Dave Owens. I graduated from Hoover in 1978, and I played football. My coach was Don Hertler Sr., and my dad, Bill Owens, played for the football team in 1947. The inaugural year of Memorial Stadium, and he was the captain of the team. After he graduated from Hoover, he went to Colgate, and he was the captain of Colgate's football team. And then he enlisted in the Marine Corps. He was in the officer program. He was actually a captain of the Marine Corps, and he was the captain of the Marine Corps football team. Before he went to the Marine Corps, he didn't know it, but he was invited to try out with the Baltimore Colts. But he'd already enlisted, and in those days, they didn't pay very much to play pro football. Yeah, my dad, he was actually a frogman in the Marine Corps. And what they used to do with the frogmen is they would put them in torpedo tubes, and they would launch them out, and then they would go search for mines, and then they would be told to rendezvous back at this point in 48 hours, and they'd have to meet back at that point to get on the ship, or the ship would leave without them. I think because his father and his grandfather served, that's what led my dad to want to go into the military. So there were 26 young men who lost their lives in World War II, and every family in North Canton knew one of those boys, so it was very special to play in that stadium and certainly to be the captain of that team that played in that stadium. As we remember Veterans Day, I think it's important, with the focus on Memorial Stadium and the men who lost their lives in World War II from North Canton, that we reflect on what service to our country means. And one of the things that makes this country so great is the sacrifice of our veterans to keep us safe and to keep us the greatest country in the world.
During a time of great uncertainty, the community of North Canton rallied together to support each other and the men and women who went off to serve in World War II. The people of North Canton continued to honor these soldiers after the war was over. In the years that followed, thousands of boys have had the privilege to play on that very field that represents the brave and courageous soldiers who did not make it back home.
For nearly 75 years, the Hoover football team has proudly stormed the field every fall Friday night. The teams in the 1980s were no exception to Hoover's long-standing tradition of excellence.
The 1988 Hoover football team was one that had many accomplishments, including a Federal League championship. One particular player from that 1988 team has a journey that goes far beyond the football field. Mr. Sean Johnson, a 1988 Hoover graduate and football alumnus, shares his story.
I went to Hoover High School from 1985 to 1988. I was involved in a lot of different things at Hoover, to include football, track, I was in the United States Air Force, and I got involved with the Air Force through the Air Force ROTC program at Ohio State. And one of the great things that we did there is we raised the flag. It taught us about honoring the flag, how to handle the flag, how to properly raise the flag. And even when I go back to Ohio State now, that brings a tear to my eye seeing those cadets raise the flag, because it meant so much to me and the lessons that I learned at Ohio State. I'm pretty proud that I was one of the 13 people that graduated, but I was really proud that I was the only one with a pilot slot. My job in the Air Force was important when I was flying cargo airplanes and flying medevac airplanes, because I was supporting the mission. I was delivering troops, I was delivering cargo all around the world, whether it was for relief or whether it was to support our troops. We took people that were sick and injured and we got them to where they needed to be. My very first mission in the Air Force was a young man who was in the Navy. He was 19 years old. He had one leg cut off at the knee and the other leg cut off near his hip. He was on a Navy aircraft carrier, and the wire broke when an airplane landed, and the wire came and basically cut his legs off, and we were taking him home. And between legs, I'm like, I'm gonna go back and talk to that young man. And he had the greatest attitude I've ever seen from anyone in my life. He was like, I'm so happy to be alive. I'm gonna go live the rest of my life. I went and got to serve the military. Not having legs is not that big a deal. And I could not believe how awesome that young man was. That really made me feel like I was doing something important. I got to do humanitarian things, and I got to do military operations. Many of the things that we did in the medevac community and medevac airplanes, we could see what we were doing, the importance of what we were doing right then. After my time in active duty, I did 10 years in the United States Air Force Reserves as an instructor pilot at Air Force Pilot Training in Del Rio, Texas, Laughlin Air Force Base. When I played at Memorial Stadium, I played under Coach Ed Glass. I learned discipline and hard work, which is really one lesson, because you can be disciplined, but if you don't work hard, the discipline doesn't matter. I was aware of the namesake of Memorial Stadium. I would ride up from the south side of town to get to football practice, and that's where the memorial used to be. So I saw the memorial, I saw the names, but honestly, as a kid, if no one explains to you, you don't understand what those names on that memorial mean. You don't understand even what the name Memorial Stadium means unless someone truly explains it to you and shows you that there were young people about your age who sacrificed everything they had and sacrificed their lives overseas fighting for freedom, fighting for America to exist, fighting for the free world to exist. So, did I see the plaque? Yes. Did I know it was called Memorial Stadium? Yes. Did I really understand what it meant? I didn't as a kid really understand. I understand now, and the older I get, the more I understand what Memorial Stadium means and the more it means to me. The idea of memorial grows partially because I've had plenty of friends in the military, people I've known who have died in the line of service in the military. Being a pilot, we've lost many, many people. I've had to go to many funerals of my fellow pilots. So that's helped me grow my understanding of what memorial means. Being older and getting to experience being married, having kids, having vacations, buying a house, those are all wonderful things that the people who Memorial Stadium represents did not get to do. I get to do it because of their sacrifice, but they didn't get to do those things. So the more I experience in life, the more I understand how much they did not get to experience in life. There are people out there sacrificing, giving of themselves so that we can have the freedom, so we can go to football games on Friday night in a free country. I hope the students are thinking about the veterans that are out there who protected their freedoms before they were even born. So if you see a veteran on Veterans Day, thank them. That also will help thank the people that are currently doing it right now.
We thank you, Sean, for your service and your courageous decision to serve our country. While Sean had the opportunity to play in a stadium with so much meaning, Another North Canton veteran has had the opportunity to coach there. Mr. Brian Baum served in the U.S. Army and now works to continue the legacy of Memorial Stadium.
Hi, I'm Brian Baum, American government teacher at Hoover High School, head football coach, and an Army veteran. Something was drawing me, the idea of serving and stepping in the military, and so I joined the United States Army Reserves. As we were finishing up basic training, our field training exercise is when 9/11 happened. And right then and there, everything just really changed with our training, and everything ramped up. You could just tell the urgency in a lot of people around there because they weren't sure what was going to happen, who's going to get called up, what was going to go down. Then I went to AIT, finished that up, and then I went back and to civilian life, as a reservist, and just did reserves and did not get called up for a while. In fact, just got into teaching, got my job, began coaching. So February of '05, I got a notice in the mail. I was like, uh-oh. Here we go, so it's go time. And when I got called up, I was called up with a lot of others, and there was people that were looking for any way, shape, or form to get out of it. And I didn't understand that because I had signed up to do this as a volunteer Army. I did this. I was going to go serve my country as they asked, and so I went through, did the best I could, did all the trainings, and just continued on being the best soldier you can be. By May, I believe, I was sent to Iraq and landed in Mosul. So. Went from, hey, let's get a little experience, let's do some, branch out, serve your country, to, hey, I was serving in a war zone in Iraq. I knew there's a lot of emotions involved with that. I knew this potential. They were calling for more and more troops, and I was part of a push there. So when I first landed, I was attached to a Cat A team based out of Sinjar, Iraq, which wasn't a bad area. We would travel to areas that weren't so nice, but a lot of that was winning the hearts and minds. So we'd go to villages, make contact. We had an interpreter. We'd go out there and, hey, what does your village need? We built a lot of wells, schools, and things like that my first couple months. Then we got moved and we got used a little differently in some other area operations. There's some times that we were stuck with PSYOPs and going in there as they were going to look for people that were on the blacklist and things like that in villages that were north of the Sinjar Mountain. There's the Battle of Telfar. We got shipped over there for that, a little bit of that. So those different experiences there, every day we weren't sure exactly how we were going to use and what we were going to do. I was put on a PRT team, which is a provincial reconstruction team. This one I was called back to Mosul. First I was called back and they're like, hey, you have an education background. We want you to be in charge of the education. So I went from everyday soldier to all of a sudden I was the asset that had to go out there and meet with individuals like the Mosul president, Nineveh province educational director, and I'm thinking to myself, hey, I'm a teacher, so a soldier teacher, and these are individuals that are professional educators at the highest levels. We were just trying to do our best to be in between there and try to do what we could for the education there of Iraq. They just kind of utilized me as they needed, month to month to month, and I got moved around quite a bit. It does change the way you view, I'll even say, your existence in the world and things like that. Coaching at a stadium with Memorial Stadium like that is really unique, and I love how they changed where that plaque is now. When we walk up there, we see it. A lot more people can see it as they walk to the stands, and that brings some of those names are still North Canton names, and they laid it all out there for everything. And like I said, they gave up everything they had in their youth and everything like that for a cause in World War II, and they have the plaque out there honoring those that gave everything. So, have some of my players fall in the military. I know they'll make great soldiers. Some I already have. I got guys this year's unit that want to go on to be Marines or soldiers, and it's that sense of pride, that sense of serving. It's important. It's not for everybody. It takes certain individuals to be able to do that and do the best they can. And what I hope students are thinking about on Veterans Day are those that they know that serve. That their grandfathers, their dads, moms, aunts, cousins, somebody that they know that has served, and just take that moment. It's nice to think about your own family and friends and things like that.
Mitch Laughlin, a 2017 Hoover graduate and football player, went straight into basic training after high school. After his Army service, Mitch came back to North Canton and joined the Hoover football coaching staff. He was able to honor the legacy of Memorial Stadium by coaching his younger brothers.
My name is Mitch Laughlin. I graduated from Hoover in 2017. I played football under Brian Baum, and I also wrestled under Nick Gamble. I am currently a football coach and a wrestling coach at Hoover, and I served in the United States Army. 2016 was my senior season. I was one of the captains of that team. So after graduation, 2 weeks later, I went off to Fort Benning, Georgia for basic training, and it was insanity, just this jump from being a high schooler to, all right, you have to be a grown-up now. It was a very interesting experience. Anyone that's been in the service knows it's hard to explain basic training because it's just this completely different thing. So I was active for 3 years with the 82nd Airborne out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then I served 3 years in Ohio National Guard. I got out of active duty in 2020, and I just finished up National Guard service this October. I was a gun team leader, so I operated the machine gun 240 Bravo, and I got the pleasure of jumping with it out of a plane, and it was a very heavy, painful experience. Every single time I jumped, that is a very powerful piece of weaponry on the battlefield, so you had to be on your game with it, know everything about it. If that thing breaks down, you got to get it back up, and it's a very vital piece of a platoon and a company in general to complete a mission. Playing at Memorial Stadium was a great honor and a privilege. It felt really good coming from a place that had that tradition, and then you have that support as someone that I knew I was going in the military. So knowing that the community and the community I was playing for and the stadium I was playing at was dedicated to World War II vets was an amazing feeling. The stadium's gorgeous. I've always loved the layout of our stadium, and then especially now the new stadium is spectacular. Then also knowing its history and the tradition that goes behind it, it was an honor and a privilege to get to play there.
In 2022, North Canton Memorial Stadium underwent major renovations, including tearing down and rebuilding the home grandstand, roof, and press box. Additionally, the memorial plaque displaying the 26 names of our fallen heroes was moved from the south entrance of the stadium to the north entrance, in an area now known as Legacy Landing.
Whether we're attending Friday night football games or celebrating our Hoover graduates with commencement now being held in the stadium, Legacy Landing will serve as a permanent reminder that North Canton Memorial Stadium is more than just a name.
On this Veterans Day, we encourage everyone to think about and recognize the men and women who fought to defend our lives, our liberty, and our freedom. We also encourage everyone to take a moment to remember the 26 heroes from North Canton who lost their lives protecting their country in World War II.
They will forever be memorialized at Legacy Landing in front of Memorial Stadium. And to all veterans, thank you for protecting, for serving, and for risking your lives so that we can live free.